Twin Cities German Immersion School Board to order. Today is October 26, 2023. Good evening, everyone, directors, staff, thank you for joining us. Let's begin with our mission, vision, and values. Do I have a volunteer to read those tonight?
Sure.
Thank you for all Albers.
Our mission is innovative education of the whole child through German immersion. Our vision is Andre Hearn, Andre Zane, Beltoff and Jenkins and Handling. And our values are curiosity, kindness, challenge and support, community, and intercultural engagement.
Great job. Tonight, we acknowledge and appreciate that TCGIS is located on Wapekute Dakota traditional, ancestral, and contemporary homeland near Lake Mitiwaka, in the land now known as Minnesota Makoche. Our presence here is linked to generations of Wapekute stewardship over their land, as well as to the historical and ongoing injustices of settler colonization that impact Indigenous people to the present day. We are committed to understanding our role in this legacy and to educating ourselves and our community about Indigenous history through continued mindfulness and engagement in and outside the classroom. Ms. Henriksen, will you please call the roll for the record?
Director Albers.
Here.
Director Alcatich.
Here.
Director Eberhardt.
Here.
Director Hartmann.
Here.
Director Heit.
Here.
Director Kulzinger.
Here.
Director Kwam Dobbs is not here. Director Reich.
Here.
Director Smaka.
Here.
Director Jesus.
Here.
Director Yemania.
Here.
And ex-official member, Executive Director Karen Flinson.
Here.
All right, thank you. We have a quorum. First item on the agenda is our consent agenda. One modification I'd like to make to tonight's agenda is to add under 9, administrative liaison. I'd like to ask for approval of our revised school year 22-23 milestones. These are the milestones that we worked on at our board retreat and have been updated. And I'd like to get formal board approval so that administration can be working off of an approved copy of milestones. And they will report on those next month. All right, with that addition, do I have unanimous consent to approve the consent agenda? If no objection, it is approved. All right, next we have open forum for public comment. And nobody is here in attendance to comment tonight. So next we go to special recognition. Tonight we're recognizing 3 different groups of people that are supporting TCGIS in fantastic ways. And Yulia is pulling up the slides. Principal, no, let's see. Director Smaka, I think you'll start by recognizing our capstone organizers.
Yep, so our first recognition is for Katarina Schirk, Esther Noy, Danny Nicholson, and Elizabeth Saintbenig. So just from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for organizing such an amazing capstone experience. As a parent of an 8th grader who hosted exchange student, I saw my daughter go from being very scared and apprehensive to just having the most amazing time. And now she can't wait for it to be her turn. And she really bonded with her exchange sister. And then as an educator myself who does experiences like this, I know how much time and effort and heart and soul goes into things like this. So we really appreciate all of the hard work you're doing. And as a board member, these types of experiences help bring our mission and vision to life. So thank you guys so much.
And next, related to the capstone, the board would like to thank all of our host families. These are 8th grade families and some 7th grade families who welcomed 8th grade or 9th grade exchange student from Germany into their homes. This can be nerve-wracking for some people. It takes a lot of preparation to become ready to host somebody that you've never met before. And they all, from what I've heard, really enjoyed their experiences. And it seems like the matches were really well done. So also good job with that, organizers. So thank you to the host families. Having hosted 2 students myself, I know it does involve a lot of driving around as well because they keep the kids very entertained. And so you have to get them from point A to point B. And then the hardest part, it turns out, is saying goodbye. So thank you to all the host families who make this possible. Not only do your kids get to experience the time with these students, but our TCGIS students as a whole are all exposed to our exchange students in their classrooms. So you bring native Germans to our whole school and you make that happen. So thank you. And next, Principal Zen Pennig will recognize our cafeteria staff.
Yes, thank you. Last spring, when we knew that the governor was reinstating free lunch for all Minnesota students, we knew that that was going to instantly mean a ton more work for our team. Although it's great for kids, it just means a lot of work for our team. So we were aware that starting breakfast at our school was something new, a new adventure. Weren't sure what we were going to get into, how many kids were going to be signing up for that. We've got about 100 to 150 on any given day taking advantage of the free breakfast. So this is the team that makes it possible for our kids to eat breakfast at school. We know that starting with a full tummy is better for academics. This is the team that provides a healthy lunch full of nutritious fruits and vegetables for our lunchtime kiddos. And they do it all, as you can see, with a smile. And they know most of the kids by name. They know which kids are vegetarian. They know which kids have special allergies. And this is the team that takes care of feeding our kids. So thanks to Anthony, Abby, Christine, Jinhee, Jennifer, and Alex. Great job. We appreciate you.
Excellent, thank you. So the next item is our audit report. And since we're running ahead of schedule, I assume is the auditor joining online?
Yes. Do you see them there yet?
Not yet.
I did just
Not yet.
email with them. So
Okay.
they'd be here soon.
Perfect. Do you want to jump into your report?
I can, sure.
Okay.
Just was charging my computer a little bit.
Thanks for your flexibility.
Yeah, can you bring it up in yours?
But they'd be here at 6:45, so.
So I'm gonna go ahead.
5 minutes.
Take them.
There. Okay, thanks for having me back. This is the October report. So I'm trying to capture the things that have happened in the last 2 months. These are the 3 new positions that we have added. We added a couple of special education EAs, educational assistants. Anya Weissner, who is a TCGIS parent, is now a special education assistant. She is a native German. We added Dora Menaner, who is friends with another teacher on staff. She is working as a special ed EA. She is a native Croatian. And then we added extra hours to Natalie Foxland, our occupational therapist, went from 0.8 with us, used to be at a different school on Fridays, to being full-time with us. We were using her extra 0.2, which is 1 full day, to increase awareness of occupational therapist type tricks and interventions with our general education students in the hopes of eliminating the need for IEPs for some students. So for example, she has brought things to the hallways like wiggle break, outlines of things of activities for kids to do to get the wiggles out, just providing teachers with extra support for helping kids get through lessons. So we're really happy to have her on board full-time. Some academic highlights, I've broken them down into some
And I think the auditor is here, so
Want me
maybe,
to pause?
maybe we could switch over.
Sure.
That work.
Pause.
Thanks again for your flexibility. I'm excited about the new staff.
Are you sure? I don't think I'm gonna be near as exciting.
Hi, Justin. Welcome to
Can
the
you hear me?
board meeting.
Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay, good. I just don't know that I'm gonna be near as exciting as the staff updates, but I'll do my best. Am I able to share my screen? Looks like I am. Okay, good. Well, I appreciate your flexibility and I apologize for cutting you off. I appreciate you having me at your meeting this evening. I will do my best to keep things moving. If anybody has any questions and wants to stop me, they certainly can. Otherwise, we can stop for questions at the end. My name is Justin Nelson. I'm a senior manager at Abdo. I've been doing the Twin Cities German audit for as long as I can remember. Let's see, I'd also like to just say a quick thank you to the school board for having us as your audit firm. We do appreciate that. And I also like to just say a quick thank you to Bergen KDV and mainly Kelly for all her help as part of the audit. We couldn't do our work without them, so we appreciate their help as well. All right. I will just go over a brief introduction here. I will be going over the audit results for FY23 as well as the focus on the general fund results, other governmental funds, which would be community service and the food service, as well as the building company. And I will close with some key performance indicators, comparing the school to others in the state of Minnesota and others in the metro region. So the audit results for FY23 are positive, and we did issue a clean unmodified opinion, which is the opinion that the charter school is looking for. We arrived at our opinion by testing a number of different transactions around paying of bills, paying of employees, looking at the state grants and revenues, looking at what the board gets to make decisions, etc. So we also, with that, we're looking for internal controls in relation to the financial statements, and we're happy to report that we don't have any internal control related findings to report to the board this evening. The second thing we are required to do as part of our audit is test Minnesota statutes and legal compliance. So the Office of the State Auditor puts guides on their website that we are required to test as part of our audit. However, we do test others. A couple examples of some of those items would be timely payment of bills within 35 days of receipt, as well as lack of conflicts of interest with anybody on the board or at the school. So happy to report again that we don't have any instances of non-compliance with Minnesota statutes either. We do have two quick recommendations just from doing the work related to things that we do just want to point out to just keep in mind in the future. Again, they're not formal findings, but just things to consider for the future. So the first one is a review of financial policies and procedures. I think this is probably just a good reminder for all entities to continue to review their all their policies, but specifically from an audit perspective, looking at the financial policies. And just noting, doing our audit, the school does not appear to have a formally adopted electronic funds transfer or capital asset policy. And those are two policies that we would recommend the school adopt in the current fiscal year. The second is just an authorized bank signer reminder. So again, just we recommend, in times of turnover and just related to internal controls, that all those things are reviewed when things do happen, and making sure that things are up to date with the bank. So again, again, a good reminder. Again, we didn't note any issues where there were unauthorized signers as of our audit date, but again, just something to keep in mind in the future. All right, so switching gears a little bit, we'll just go over the average daily membership. Again, we put this in here just at the start of our presentation, as this is such a big driver of school finance. And just knowing, again, trends in the one way or another can have a big impact on the finances. So again, I think the school overall has experienced some positive results over the past few years, some really strong consistency in their ADM. And again, just even a little bit of an uptick if you look from the past couple of years. So I think overall, again, nothing too significant to point out here, and nothing that's probably a surprise or new information, but again, something we like to point out as far as trend and just to get our presentation started. So the next item, as we focus on the general fund balance for the fund balance reserves. So we do just see the two lines in the graph. We see the general fund expenditures. We also see the general fund balance reflected as a percentage of those expenditures noted above. So again, I also mentioned that the school does have a fund balance policy stating those that number is to be between the 20 and 25% range. So again, I think over the past 5 years, overall, the school has done really well in keeping, above that fund balance policy. And again, even if with those expenditures continuing to go up, the school has maintained a good fund balance. And again, it has dropped a little bit in the past couple of years, but I think overall, nothing too significant to point out. And I think overall positive results. We focus just on 2022-23. We're just going to look at the general fund budget to actual and maybe how we got to that final number on the prior slide. So we do just look at the school's general fund budget, knowing that it was amended, and looking at that final budget where the school was expected to increase its fund balance about $100,000. I think results came in almost right on there. Again, the school did increase about $105,000. There was a small transfer out of about $6,000 to one of the other school funds. Again, there are some the actual amounts again were a little bit under for revenues and expenditures, and again the main focus of some of those variations related to special education, again offsetting revenues and expenditures. So again, overall a pretty positive year, and again right on that final budget. So I think overall a really good year. So next slide we look at is looking specifically at the general fund revenues per ADM. We'll also move on to the general fund expenditures here in a couple slides. But we do also see the first time of the Region 11 and the statewide averages. Again, Region 11 really is made up of metro area charter schools. And again, the statewide average is all charter schools in the state of Minnesota. Again, no school districts included. So again, I think this is just information for the school to use on a per student basis in comparison, with others in the state and the region. A little bit on the lower side. Again, I think there's a story for every school. I think, the average here tends to be driven up with special education need. And as we may see on a future slide, again, the need for the school in Twin Cities German is a little lower than others. So I think, again, just a slide for informational use to compare the school on a revenue basis to others, as well as just to look at what a significant portion probably that state source is on a per student basis in comparison to other revenues that the school has.
Hey, Justin.
Yep.
Can you go back 1 second?
Yes.
Can you just clarify for me the Region 11, when you reference charter schools, that's all charter schools or that includes charter schools?
Region 11 it's called I think it's the economic development region, but Region 11 is more or less the metro area. Statewide average is all, and it is in both cases the gold and the black are
so the Region 11 and statewide averages include all public schools, including charter schools.
just charter schools.
That's just charter schools?
It is just charter schools. Yeah, our note on the bottom is semi-misleading, but it's where we get it from, and it's the exact title of it, so that's what we put. But it is specifically charter schools, no districts.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, so as I mentioned, we'll get into the general fund expenditures per student. Again, I'll explain this chart really quick. Again, what we see on the screen here is, again, some boxes in the middle where we have go from the 25th to the 75th percentile of all those schools in the state. And the lines kind of are drip lines that go up to the 90th percentile and down to the 10th percentile. So again, anything outside of those would be kind of a little bit of an outlier, again, on the lower or higher end. So we see here, again, I think that on the statewide average on a per student basis, expenditures per student is as close to 19,000. I think, again, the school has done well just monitoring its expenditures. And again, as you can see here, really strong consistency year over year on those expenditures per student, consistent in that 12 to 13,000 range. So I think overall good there. And again, just really informational use here for future years. The next we show is a little bit of a unique chart too, just again, more for informational use. Nothing is bad, nothing is good on this chart. I think it just does tell a little bit of a story. when we receive our general ledger, we do have things broken down by salaries, wages, employee benefits, supplies, and purchase service. So we like to put a little bit of a mix of what those are in the general fund. So again, as we can see, over the past few years, it's really been pretty consistent between salaries, wages, and benefits, close to that 65 to 70% range, which is pretty good. I think there are some schools out there that do have a little bit of a higher percentage of purchase services. I think that number continues to go up a little bit just with the difficulty finding staff, but I think again, just an informational chart to use. And again, it does follow the general fund expenditures on the left-hand axis there as well. So next we'll look at the school's food service. Looking at the budget to actual, again, the school did approve a final budget to increase its reserves, or to actually have some reserves, about 18,000. And again, I think actual results were pretty consistent to that. The school did have a little bit of a an undervariance in revenues and undervariance in expenditures. I believe the transfer in was related to some activity that happened in the prior year, reimbursing the fund for some meals for, I can't remember if it was summer school students or what. But I know that transfer in was mainly due to some things from the prior year. And again, I think overall, looking at the food service, I think a really positive year. There are a lot of schools out there that do need to get dollars or transfer money from the general fund to cover some of those losses. So I think overall, really positive results and fiscal spending there for the food service fund. So in the next chart, we do see that same drip chart again, as we can see here, just to compare, what are other people doing or what are other schools doing on a per student basis. Again, I think we can see here, been a little up and down for the school. Obviously, there's tons of reasons for that, just student need and obviously the pandemic in the back end of this chart as well. So as you can see, just looking at the averages, again, close to that 750 mark in the school. Twin Cities German kind of in that 400 to 500 mark. So again, a piece of information to use going forward. So 13 looks at the community service fund budget to actual. Again, not too much to point out here. I think overall, the fund did experience a good year. It raised its reserves close to 30,000, which was kind of right on budget. Revenues and expenditures were actually a little bit both over budget. But again, I think offsetting, I think overall in line with the budget, and I think everything really went well. And the school does have some good positive reserves should things go south in the future with this fund, or there's some things that need to be paid for from the community service fund. All right, so next we'll just focus real quick on the building company. So we titled this slide Building Company Fund Balance and Bonds Compared to Lease Revenue. So again, we just like to just point out just the overall fund balance in the building company, which is kind of again squeezed in there, that chart in the middle, looking at the fund balance of about 1.8 million. So I think overall that's good. And obviously a lot of that is going to be used to pay for the bonds, not only next year, but in the future. We also just show again, for informational purposes, what that principal and interest is to be, as well as the lease revenue that is, planned to offset those expenditures. So again, overall, things look really good, big picture wise for the building company. Again, as we point out one other ratio, obviously this is something that's really important to the school, and looking at the building company is looking at that days cash on hand. There's a lot of information on this slide. I think the main thing to point out is kind of right there in the bottom right, looking at the days of cash on hand as we look at just one snapshot or one day in time, the June 30th, 2023, which is our audit date. Overall, things look really good, about 85 days cash on hand. So I think overall that's really positive for the school. All right, last few are just looking at some key performance indicators. Again, bringing in some of those ratios, and we'll also look at the expenditures one step further with elementary and regular instruction and special education. So the first one, looking at the general fund reserves, again, we did see a similar chart before, just looking at Twin Cities German. But in this slide, we do show a similar, chart to compare, where are the others in the state of Minnesota. And again, I think the school is kind of, specifically in the last couple of years, kind of right in line with kind of what a lot of those other schools are doing. Did experience some positive years in the 19 to 21 and did dip a little bit in the past couple of years. But I think overall, again, this is just good information to compare to and just know what others are doing in the state. So next one, again, like I mentioned, we show a chart previously on just the total expenditures per ADM. We also think it's relevant to just show, one step further, again, just looking at the, the elementary and secondary instruction expenditures, as well as the special ed on the next slide. So again, as we can see here, the statewide averages, and kind of follow the same line as Twin Cities German. Again, state averages close to that 6,300, and again, Twin Cities down to 5,200. So I think overall pretty positive results, and again, shows up when we look at how strong the school is financially. And the last one, as I mentioned, maybe back to that revenue slide, just looking at this, the school, again, just has a little lower need and just in general, lower expenditures related to special education in comparison to other schools in the state of Minnesota. And again, just something to point out and looking at the past 4-year trend and just comparing to others. With that, I've reached the end of my presentation. You can see the staff, our audit team that was on the audit. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you for the presentation, Justin. What questions do we have?
I have one question.
Yes, go ahead, Director Hartman.
It's what Director Hyde had already asked about in the general fund revenues per ADM. This isn't really about the audit, because I know you said this was mostly for informational, but do we have any theories why, as compared to Region 11, the TCGIS revenue is significantly lower if this is not all schools, if this is a measure of just charter schools?
I think he said because of the amount of special education revenue of their schools.
Would that show in the state revenue?
Correct.
As the state revenue is, the federal sources is much lower, that could be spent, but
Nope, state. So on a percentage basis, I'd have to look into it specific to the school, but state revenue for special education is probably in the 1 to 1.5 million range, whereas federal is probably closer to 300,000. And
About
again,
60% of our
I'm
spend.
kind of guessing those numbers, but the sped for state is much more significant on a dollars basis in state versus federal.
There's also
think
some state funding that is compensatory funding based on the concentration of free and reduced lunch.
that's what I was just gonna say.
And then some of the sped funding is also state, so. And given that we're in Region 11, there's a higher concentration of free and reduced lunch.
I have a question on the building company fund balance, just looking at the chart. Yeah, that chart. I'm a little confused about this because the lease revenue line, is that $1 million?
Correct. I don't know exactly what it is, but it's probably somewhere in that range. Yeah.
Okay. Well, so this makes it look like we get more lease revenue than we need to spend on the building, but I think it's opposite.
I think lease revenue is what we pay to the building company as a school, and that's 90% at most of lease aid.
Okay,
That's correct. The lease revenue is in the bond documentation for,
okay.
as Richard noted, what the
Well,
school
every year we are adding to our building company fund balance, basically, because not all of that goes to the loan.
Well,
assuming.
so we only receive 90% in lease aid from the state in addition to the general funding at most. So
Mhm.
is that what that gap is?
This is really specific to the building company, and again, like this would be outlined in the bond documents that the school is to, pay the. This really wouldn't have anything specifically to do with lease revenue, I guess. Obviously does, but it's. I think to the point there is, unless there's other expenditures lease revenue is designed and outlined to be higher on a year-to-year basis. In case there are other expenditures, or just to make sure there's cash on hand in the future to pay the bonds. As far as lease aid that the school gets, that I don't know exactly what that gap is, but you're right that it would be, it's either it's 90% of costs, or it's per student times 13, 14 or something. So whichever is lower. So that.
Well,
Go ahead.
oh, sorry. I was just gonna pipe in a little bit of that gap is we do contribute every month to the capital improvement fund in the escrow accounts for the building company. And then we also put a little bit of money into the expense fund to cover just like accounting fees and audit fees and 990 fees for the building company. So that's also another piece of why there's that gap.
Great, thank you.
Kelly, did you have anything else to add to that question about why the big difference between TCGIS and Region 11 on state aid?
No, I think you covered it really with the state special ed, just because we don't have as many sped kiddos as a lot of other schools. And also when you touch on the compensatory, our free reduced is a lot lower than a lot of the other schools. So I would say those are the two big factors.
Any other questions for the auditor?
I would just be curious on any future audit or new GASBs coming down the line that we should be aware of. I know there's one related to like capital assets that's coming that might be good to talk about. But just any others that you know of.
Well, GASB's been hard at work, and they've certainly hit us with a number of standards in the last couple of years. I guess from a charter school perspective, I'm honestly, and I don't know which one you're referring to, but I'm not really aware of a significant impact in future years related to GASBs. I believe in our executive summary, we do outline the future GASBs, and I only think that there's 2 or 3 of them in there that are outlined that are actually approved and going to happen. One of them relates to compensated absences. So I guess I'm not entirely sure which one you'd be alluding to, Kelly, but personally, I don't know that there's, thankfully, from our perspective and the schools probably as well, that there's any significant GASB standards coming in the future. But
Awesome. I just know some of our other auditors are encouraging us to move to a group capital asset policy and like a $5,000 threshold based on some GASB guidance they've gotten. But
I mean, I guess it could have been related to an existing GASB. I would totally agree. And looking at a capital asset policy, as I mentioned earlier, that and maybe for some additional context, I think an equipment / what you own list for internal purposes may be different than what a capital asset list looks like for accounting purposes or audit purposes. So to that point, a higher threshold is something that I would generally recommend.
sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks for the questions, Kelly.
Yeah.
Last call for questions for the auditor. All right. Thank you so much for the presentation.
You got it. I really appreciate you having me, and I guess good luck the rest of the year.
Thanks, Justin. Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us back to Principal Penig's presentation.
All right, tough to follow the audit.
Is it those?
All good news. Here's more good news. These are some highlights about things that are going on academically in the last couple of months. Kindergarten spent the day at Gibbs Farm. What's interesting to note there is that we do a lot of our Native American standards while we're there, candle making, and the kids learn a lot about Indigenous culture. McCall's Read Naturally program is being pushed into tier 1 by some of our tier 2 folks led by Marin Flavel. I think Director Albers is part of this, potentially branching on to 7th and 8th grade English. And what that does is it is keeping our kids out of needing the tier 2 services. So just keeping more kids in tier 1 and participating in the general education curriculum. Capstone ended successfully. DSD1 sign up and parent meetings will begin soon. We have a lot to thank to Director Eberhard and Katrin Gilhoff, our set of coordinator for that. But Harris Night for 6th graders happened this week, so that great experience is happening again, thanks to Herr Tabish and his team. Math group started again in grades 3 and 4. It's a program I talked about last year. It's really cool. The 3rd and 4th grade teachers do some leveling, and they bring in some of the interventionists and some of the interns take groups, and then they get the kids into groups of, I saw one today, it was maybe 10 to 12 kids. And then they can extend with the kids who are achieving really high, meeting all the standards and pushing them a little bit above. And then they can swoop up the kids that are struggling a little bit and give them some more concentrated practice. So thanks to those 3rd and 4th grade teachers for getting that initiative going. The first grading cycle of 23-24 completed. We're in the middle of data meetings. Second intervention cycle will start as soon as those are finished. Some special education highlights, just an update that co-teaching has increased in middle school. We started with the bridge program and we branched out doing it in 7th, 8th grade math. And then we're also going to branch out to 7th or 8th grade or both English. And that's keeping kids in class with peers, enabling them to receive the academic support they need while still staying in their general education classes. Interns are in phase 2, so that's the practice phase now. They're fully integrated in classes and assisting with the teaching and the learning and bringing that native German speaking that we appreciate from them. Task force goals, I've talked about the task forces before, and the task force goals have settled on some goals, keeping in mind that we chose the strategic plan as our backwards design for these goals. So it's a 2-year process. We will get back to these on the 11/1 date. We'll do some prioritization, which ones we want to tackle first. Some have already been checked off. We are prioritizing German immersion PD on PD days. That one's coming up on next week, Wednesday. Katrin Gilhoff is leading that, and she's going to do elementary in February. We're going to work on language goals in each lesson. Our DOC curriculum is going to get some attention. There is a goal to increase their writing scores on the EFLA and the DSD1 by a couple of points, and continuing to look at this intensive DOC course that we started this year at the beginning for newcomers and analyze that for effectiveness. Our whole child task force is going to take a look at the SEL curriculum and do some ensuring of school-wide calming spaces, adding field trips, working with the Diversity and Belonging Committee on diverse cultures, and creating school-wide usage of restorative practices. There's a whole lot that goes into restorative practices, so stepping, kind of tipping-toeing into some of that, and that's on the behavior side of things. The Innovative Education Task Force is working on the drive and some organization there. Always intending to do this method training, which has been in our strategic goal for a while, getting to some study skills, using Lexile and quantile levels to leverage scores. That's going to happen on 11/1. That's hopefully going to see an increase in maybe some MCA scores and taking those Lexiles and quantiles both for math and for English and looking at individual needs. And then that task force was going to tackle some new science standards and next gen science methods, but we actually have since then pulled that out. The science teachers are going to work on that individually. I'm going to talk more about that in a second. The science standards implementation just to remind you, those have to be fully implemented by 24-25. The state's been very generous in their implementation schedule of this. And it's not just a new set of standards of teaching points, but it's also a new method of teaching. So we have a lot of scientists on the board. I think you'll appreciate that the next gen standards are very exploratory in nature. They are creating little scientists with investigative natures. And so we are sending one of our science teachers to the science teacher conference in Rochester. It's in a couple of weeks. That teacher is then going to come back. We are doing a train the trainer method. She did receive some training in St. Paul when she was there at Kat Sweeney, when she was part of St. Paul schools. And then she's going to go and get trained a little bit more, come back and work with the rest of our teachers on what it means to teach with next gen science standards. I talked about summer writing probably in June, and just to let you know what happened with that, 90 hours of our summer writing were spent on science curriculum to change to the new science standards that was approved by the Curriculum Advisory Committee and completed by our teachers. There were 130 hours awarded and 90 of them were focused on science. Getting our science standards implemented. I've talked to the science standards coordinator at MDE. She says that our implementation of the implementation is impressive. Schools are behind. Next slide, please. Just as a reminder, this is the academic standards and curriculum review schedule. So what we're focused on right now is the science, but we know that English is just around the corner. And if you flip to the next slide, the Curriculum Advisory Committee is working on changing the rubric that we wrote for math curriculum to English language arts, changing a few things, modifying it appropriate for that topic so that we can turn around and use that for the novels that we're using, for the units that we have, so that we can choose curriculum that fits our needs. Student support updates. We've added a few educational assistants to better support kids in first grade. You're going to see a graph in a couple of slides that will explain more about that. The first elementary assembly happened before break, and that's what this picture is. You can see Dean Radicke got her big first introduction. I wasn't here that day, but I heard it was really lovely, and Nina Maslowski should be acknowledged. It was her idea. She believed in it. Others were skeptical. It was a great day. Middle school assemblies, October focuses some anti-bullying. So our middle school assembly is tomorrow. We're also acknowledging the interns, or introducing the interns. Student council has been elected. We'll let those announcement, well, that announcement will probably come out in the next room brief. We'll start meeting with student council soon. GSA and Diversity Club will begin meeting in November. I just included that for the board to watch later. You can press forward. I think there might be an empty slide. There we go. We had taken a couple of weeks to think about how we wanted to respond to student behavior. And this is what we ended up coming up with. So I'll just gloss over this really quickly. What's interesting to note is that we dipped into our CEIS funds and hired Vanessa Kohler, who has been just a total treasure. She is our #1 walkie first responder call, triage 911, if you will. When there is a need for support, Vanessa is the first person to intercept the call and kind of do some determining of who it is, what the situation is, and then she brings in a social, emotional, behavioral access provider. Perhaps if it's a kiddo who is on a caseload, who knows a certain person, we'll bring in Catherine if it is a discipline situation, and is just kind of the road map, or the director of traffic, so to speak. If it is a special education student, we're leaning on Kirsty Foss, who's a great hire. She's our new special education social worker, incredibly knowledgeable. She's working and blending really well with our current mental health staff to just add to the wealth of that pot. Andrew and case managers are always on tap for that as well. We added something new. You've heard of the buddy room. We're adding the buddy teacher. So we're adding, if there is a teacher who needs to de-stress or tap out, we have teachers who have signed up with their prep hour. And so we have a list, the office knows what to do. I call and say, I need a buddy teacher, I need to tap out, I need a 5-minute break. Office will look at the list, Julie Alcatu, it looks like she has given up the prep period. They call Julie, Julie comes to me and I tap out. We're just hoping that teachers feel supported and understanding that, yeah, you don't always need to hold it together. We're rallying around everybody to acknowledge that sometimes you just need to tap out. Student disciplinary is still Catherine on hand as number one responder for that. And the purple team is the mental health team. So if there's a risk assessment, maybe some suicidal ideation, some kind of very serious mental health issue, it is our mental health team that is the first responder to that. But they get called from Vanessa. Any questions around that? I would pause on that slide if there were. I think this is working pretty well because the next slide is the number of referrals that we've been given by teachers. The left one is the medium response. We're trying to get rid of those terms. And then the one on the right is the high level. The large columns are first grade.
Last year's kindergarten.
Last year's kindergarten. And so that's why we've been throwing the extra support into first grade. Got a couple of extra EAs. Vanessa, when she doesn't just wait in a room to be called to an emergency or a crisis, she is in first grade. She's going to specialists, she's helping with transitions. She's got a couple of high frequency kiddos that she is visiting regularly. She's built a lot of really good relationships. She is helping out those teachers. And then what's great is the next slide, I think.
I have a question.
No, back
before you go.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't see kindergarten on there. Are there no issues in kindergarten? So
We haven't had any referrals for
you've had no referrals for kindergarten. Okay, fantastic.
correct. Yeah. This is 134 referrals total. At this time last year, we were 100 more.
Wow.
So that was my question, what's the time period for this since the first of school?
Yeah.
And is there something to the right, to the left of, in the, what are you calling it, not yellow sheets?
That little spot.
So the difference between the chart on the left and the right.
Oh, 5.
It's actually out of order. I think
Six,
for some
got it,
reason.
okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
We're in the middle of switching. We used to use a system called Swiss, and we're going to switch to keep our data in Infinite Campus right now. It's just a tighter, cleaner system. And so that might be why some of this data doesn't really does. It's also the graph is different for me. It's not what Swiss means. Like it's 100 less. I was just saying that.
100 less than last year.
100 less last year. Yeah.
Hi.
All right, so then the next slide is coming from a presentation that Catherine put together to deliver to teachers just on kind of an update, pulse check on student behavior. And so a couple of things that are happening is that we're using data. PBS has met a bunch of times, is altering things based on student data, coming up with pizza slices in the lunchroom, school store for middle school. There's just been a lot of initiatives, a lot of excitement around positive interventions. Chromebook misuses are down. Teacher support calls are down. We're using the SEB data, the reading math data, just as usual to have those tier 2 interventions. We're leaning on our SWST. We've actually added elementary SWST for the first time. Dean Radke found a way to make that work in the schedule. So K through 4 also meeting as a group. School-wide support team. And that team meets together to problem solve problems that are patterns, things that are being seen all over, and then coming up with interventions for those or specific children. For example, if there's a second grade team, the FIAD teacher sees that kid, the drama teacher sees that kid, and the classroom teacher. So getting that group of everybody who is around that kiddo to brainstorm and to talk about patterns. MTSS and database decisions are encompassed in all of this. Some practices that are new in the blue circle is the K2 critical practices. We put together a list of things that are mostly routines that we believe should be a part of every K2 classroom. And they are things like line orders.
There's examples throughout this room. I think like the yellow sheets, right?
Well, this isn't a K2 classroom, but those are
That's
also
true,
good
but-
routines too.
There's good
Yeah.
routines here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of good routines.
There are a lot of
Stuff.
routines here. And so just kind of at least making an inventory of those and making that available, especially when our teachers, our newer teachers are coming maybe from Germany, or we've got teachers coming from other countries, just compiling all the knowledge of success we have and putting it on one document. Any questions about any of those things?
Do any of these boxes include kind of the tagging in the parents? Or,
The SWST is a school-wide support team, which includes parents.
okay,
You mean communication to the parent?
communication, setting the expectation, so like, you know, the kid is also getting the support at home and the parents are aware.
Right, yeah.
Communicating with parents is not on here, but it's something that
It's part of our
every
protocol, but you're right,
SWST we go to, that's usually the first question that Catherine and I will ask is what communication has happened at home. Yeah, these are the things that we're doing at home as a team that I agree.
Yeah.
Teacher parents are part of that team.
I mean, for obvious reasons, they can't be on some of these.
No,
teams,
no, I know.
but the communication
Just, yeah,
is
the
part of the
yeah.
protocol, although it should be probably reflected in.
Any office referral that is a high level is parent.
I have a question about the going back the teacher tap out thing.
Yeah.
Is that teacher opting in or is it everyone? And then do you have data on how often it's been used so far?
We've had it used once and the teachers were not required to do it. It was an opt-in only. If there is an hour where there is no teacher that has opted in, then Catherine and I have opted in. The teachers are great. There is currently no principal tap on. I think there might be one more slide. Okay, teacher supports. German immersion middle school session is coming next week. I mentioned ES1 will be in February. Homelessness training is required training. We actually had to bump that to the 20th. Optional training for positive behavioral systems by one of our behavioral specialists is showing up on the 11/1 PD day. And what's important is that we're trying to get those CE credits. To renew a tier 4 license, you need 125 CEU hours. To renew a tier 1 license, I think it's 75. So we're really trying to get as many hours in. There's a couple of different categories that we're trying to check off. And all teachers, I mentioned the K2 critical practices again, the buddy teacher list, cognitive coaching and PLCs had started. That's a big all teacher support. The new teacher mentor program update. We are having our quarterly meeting in a week or so. The mentors and mentees are completing their logs. Lists of topics are going out every month with checklists and just guiding those conversations. And so that the mentees are keeping track of the things that should be discussed. Positive feedback all around on the new teacher mentor program. We have leaned on the tier supports for teachers. And so we're working our way through some of those. It's been great to just have that set and be able to have a document to work from. And we just signed off on an instructional coach who's going to come in and work with the new teachers beginning in November. They each get a pre-ob, a 30-minute observation and a post-observation. What's great about that is it's not a colleague here at school. They get that through cognitive coaching. It's not an evaluative observation from an administrator who can see their vulnerabilities. It's just for them. It's a really great opportunity to ask good questions without while holding face and have kind of a neutral party. We did that 2 years ago. We did not do it last year. Any questions about teacher supports? I think that, yeah.
What language does that instructional coach speak?
The instructional coach speaks English, but comes from a background where she was working at a Spanish immersion school. And so for her, watching teachers teach in a language that she does not speak is something that she has done. Which is more than I can say for the last instructional coach. I wish we had that to German. That'd be great. The good news is our cognitive coaches usually do, and our administrators do.
Good question.
That's a really good question. Yeah.
Excellent presentation.
There's a lot going on.
Yes,
We're never
indeed.
bored. Thanks.
Are there any questions remaining for Principal Plainfin? All right, thank you so much. Guess what? We're running ahead of schedule. And we get to take our recess now. So how about we take a 15-minute recess? Okay. We are now in recess. We'll be back in 15.
Oh, that's.
That feels like it's gonna be a non-issue.
Okay,
Once they do it once, things. Just go in there and just,
awesome.
no extra charge.
And I think.
So you should tune in.
That's funny.
Oh, they just keep doing it
Okay.
for me. I don't know. I bring like, I have like 4 or 5 phones on the
Okay.
number. Yeah. For the guy who started it. So.
Okay, it is 7:44 PM. We'll call this meeting back to order. Next item on the agenda is the director's report. Director Cleansing.
Go ahead. So our enrollment update is, we're sitting fairly stable from where we were, 586. You can see we saw the 17 openings in kindergarten, 0 in first and 0 in second, with a few in third, fourth, and fifth. Go ahead. So we are working with, I don't expect you to read the small print, but there's some bigger print on there that I think is the bigger point. So we did engage Bloomwell Group, which is the presentation you had at the last meeting. And as promised, they've been very swift in starting to work with the team. And their process is what you see there. They are currently engaged in data collection with us as of last week. No, the week right before break. Working on what our current families look for. We've shared the parent survey that we did the last few years. They're helping us identify our community partners, including some of the preschools in the area that we should be really focused on. And then the key dates around events that we need to focus on, such as the tour dates, copy clutch, and we're going to revive the kindergarten craft events and invite other students or other parents who are prospective parents. We've had a meeting. I would say meeting 1 for us has been, it just happened yesterday. And I think some people on the communications committee might have gotten a little glimpse of what that was in that meeting. No, probably not, because it hadn't happened yet. Maybe the first meeting we had. Anyway, they talked a little bit about this plan though, I think, at communications.
Yes.
We're there, we've got Katarina there, Katarina Sheard Page, our communications and outreach person, Nicole Chriselle, who's recruitment and enrollment, and then and myself and Kimberly. So we're all there making sure that we get the plan operating and helping to identify the local goals and targets. They started to draft a calendar with event dates and started to line item some of the budget, and I think they're still working on messaging. The bookmark for going in trick-or-treat bags is in print. I don't know, it's working on getting printed right now. So I suspect we'll hand those out on Monday for folks who want to put those in trick-or-treat bags. And those did get reviewed by Bloomwell Group and they have the QR code on them. So this will be solidifying the branding, and all of this is working towards the date of February lottery, so that you'll see a ramp up in digital media ads and our meetings for prospective families. And I think also too, aside from this, Elizabeth and I talked today about a retention event where we're gonna look at some sort of presentation in January
some sort of event to solidify why families are here and why they should stay. For families who might be thinking about leaving. Or they may not share that with us, but we're gonna run the event, like, this is why we think you wanna stay here. The reason for that is we see a little bit of a dip in enrollment or a loss, sometimes at around 4th, 5th grade. So we're gonna focus really on those grade levels for that messaging. And I think I've said before, in immersion schools, there's a little lag occasionally academically in that 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. In those 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade years. And then if you look at even our data and all the data of other immersion schools, by 7th or 8th grade, they're outperforming their peers. So we just need to make sure that message is clear so that the families that are making decisions are comparing apples to apples and not apples to oranges. So just want to put that up there to show you that that's in motion, and it's a multi-layered plan, and the team is working on it. They seem very enthusiastic about this work. And our focus is mostly on kindergarten and 1st grade for the recruitment. Go ahead. There is kind of a momentum that I just mentioned. And you can kind of see it in this visual that they use with us, the email and text, the digital ads, which they're going to be working on. We've got a couple mailings built in, and community outreach. We'll be creating the immersion, why immersion. There's a word they use for it. It's like a kindergarten readiness guide, but we're going to make it a why dual language or why immersion guide for families. I'm going to put that out there so that when they click on it, it'll be something that'll lead them to our school. And then there's near the tail end is going to start to do more phone calls and other canvassing in the area. Okay, go ahead. The goal is, it's one thing to just have a message, but then we need to educate. That's where the immersion guide comes in and the reasons why. So we'll get some families, they'll be aware, but then they'll kind of turn away. But those who are a little bit interested might click on the immersion guide or the kindergarten readiness guide. And then they'll get a little more interested. They'll look at our culture and philosophy, and then they'll get to the point of our enrollment and when we're so friendly and happy, then they're going to sign up and want to be with us. So that's kind of the theory of action with how we're building the campaign to recruit. Our targets are around 85 kindergartners, which is 75 spots plus 10 on the wait list. I mean, I'll be happy if we get more than that, but that's our target. And 25 1st graders. That's for the 15 open spots that exist, plus hopefully 10 on the wait list. We also want to make retention grades 1 through 8 one of our goals. And some of the ways we're going to do that is through parent ambassadors, preschool reading events, kindergarten classroom craft open houses, attending community fairs and events, and digital media. And this is a slide from last time, just reminding us that we're at 586, budgeted at 611. Now we're going to move into the detailed analysis from last time regarding MCAs. And this is the overall for Twin Cities German Immersion. And it's a repeat of the slide that we showed last time. And it's meant to kind of, it's a good thing Elizabeth is here today because she's really talking about how we're trying to work on what you see in front of you there with respect to some of the results not being exactly where we want them to be. And you can see over the years that there have been some declines, but of course we're coming back towards what we were in 2019. So we're trying to get back towards that, although in science we've dipped. So we're gonna unpack this a little bit on the next two slides. Go ahead. This is not MCA's, but you want to talk a little bit about the, well, the
So wanna
SOPA?
talk about the
Yeah, go
SOPA?
ahead.
The SOPA is a second grade assessment that we do, which is focused on oral proficiency. And it trends in the same ways that we see our DSD at the other end of this, that listening is always the thing that our kids feel 100% usually. Speaking, everything that has to do with production is where our kids, just like all language students, are struggling. And so we get to backwards design, which is what the DSD folks are doing right now, is starting at the end and working our way towards second grade, and hopefully coming up with lists of things that then the second grade work on through third grade, fourth grade, etc. For example, articles are something that we see in eighth grade that the kids really struggle with. If you don't know the dare, dear, dots, then you can't choose the right pronoun when you're in the dative, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, not a surprise there.
Excellent. The German proficiency exam taken in the spring of third grade definitely shows the consistency in listening being usually the student's best skill when it comes to the German language. Listening and speaking.
We also know that in order to be able to speak and produce and to write, that you need to be hearing the German language. And this is a grade that 1/3 of them was online at some point. And despite best efforts, no matter what, their input, their comprehensible input that they encountered that year is automatically down. And so we're just still trying to build back from that.
So you can see we've come to regaining most of it in listening. Can you talk a little bit what we talked about at dinner with the work that's being done to backwards map DSD and skills?
Yeah, the German immersion task has a subtask goal, which is focusing on increasing scores on the writing components for DSD1. And ultimately that is going to need to go backwards and all the way up to second and third grade. They can pinpoint patterns and look at, although the DSD will not provide us exactly what the kids were missing on, the practice tests that the kids take that lead up to the DSD1 is the data that we can use to then hopefully create benchmarks or create areas of focus to increase the writing, things like increasing the stamina of kids writing, being able to produce at a certain grade 100 words in, say, 5 minutes or whatever the time is. So just creating a more succinct program. K8.
So in sixth grade, seeing a similar trajectory here. So regaining back some of the loss, but with a little bit to go.
Keeping in mind that every year the cohort is unique. And this sixth grade and this year's current seventh graders are an incredibly strong cohort.
And then eighth grade. $120%. Not to be cool there.
Right. The one that we've seen the least amount of wavering and consistent at the time the kids are getting to eighth grade.
Yep. Okay, go ahead. So one thing we're gonna look at is a 3/4 of, can you go back to that slide just a second? Sorry. 3/4 of Twin Cities German immersion students are making progress in their achievement on the state exams, which is pretty significant. Means they're not just status quo. Means they're literally 3/4 of the students in this school have increased their achievement since last year. Their rate of achievement. So you see here for, this is for math. And you can see the state in the first column in each of those three categories. So for the state, they can, only 54% of kids are making those increases in proficiency. At the other immersion schools, we are similar to our percentages that are making progress. You can see L'Etoile du Nord and Yinghua. On the L'Etoile du Nord comparison, you can see St. Paul's school districts. And the 63% of their students are not making or any increases on the proficiency exams. And I don't, I don't like to say that, but it just shows you the very distinct difference between how our students are doing as a whole versus the students in the district. Go ahead.
Is it just me or the percentages in those charts do not make sense in the state bars? It adds up to 130%.
Yeah, I have to go. I mean, I took them from the
It looks like the 43.6% should only be 13.6%.
yeah, that one looks like it's a mistake. Yeah. The 43.6 should be 13. That was, yeah, sorry.
The top one.
Yeah. The 1 and the 4 are wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just a reminder that TCGIS is its own district, so that's why the two
Yes.
are similar.
And same with Yinghua as its own district.
Yinghua is a little bit more apples to apples because, except no, actually they're not. We're the only one that's K-8 on that slide.
But the Yinghua's one.
K-12,
No, they're K-8.
they're K-8, okay.
They have a
Let's call
pathway
them
to another school for high school like we
But-
do.
K-
But you can see we're relatively, actually, we're doing a little better than Yinghua. Because we have more kids whose achievement level is improving than Yinghua does. And then we have some that are maintaining. And then 23% are decreasing. Yinghua only has 21% decreasing, but that's probably a statistically insignificant percent. So we're doing significantly better, and then you can see similar, okay, I think the numbers are right on this one. You
So
can-
Karen, before you
yeah,
move on,
yeah.
this measures year over year improvement in test scores, okay?
Yeah, so our kids are either staying the same or making
Okay.
progress, yep. Which you can see is a pretty big thing to look at, because in the district, over half of the kids are not making progress.
Yeah.
And it's this data like 5th grade to 6th grade or 5th grade compared to previous year's 5th grade.
This is the student.
Okay.
Individual student. Which is why it looks different than when you see the percent of students proficient. But this is not some data, this is not data we looked at last time, which is why I pulled it out. So yes, this is the state tracking our student might have been in a different school last year and taken the MCA. And then when they take it with us, the state's able to measure that.
Do you know how they define improvement? How big of a jump does it have to be to be counted
I
here?
will look it up, but I don't
Yeah.
know. They have like a scale score. Yeah, but I think it's a. It is, yeah. They use statistical analysis to make sure it's a statistically significant increase. And yeah, you can see like L'Etoile du Nord, there in reading. They had about 10% more of their students who made an increase. But in terms of maintaining or increasing achievement levels, you can see we're about the same. And we're right in there with Yingwa as well. But outperforming the state and the St. Paul School District. Okay. So this is the proficiency of disaggregated data groups, and before we get too far into it, we did not pull out the ELO because the sample size was too small. So I won't be showing it, but we have it. So in this is not progress, this is just straight proficiency. Okay, so we're moving off of the progress and onto the proficiency data, and you can see where our math proficiency is for students receiving special education. And we do have around 50% last year who did not make proficiency, but we lowered that this year. So you can see a little bit of improvement there. Especially too in the partial repeats, we saw improvement there as well. Okay. And for reading proficiency, kind of stayed the same, maybe got a little bit worse. Except that we did, yeah, that's pretty much, it's about the same. The percent proficient on reading MCAs, you can see we have both the statewide and the school specific data, and the color codes are there for you. And that was to show that students here are doing better than if they're non-white multiracial than if they were at the state level. We didn't pull out the district data, but it probably looks similar. And this is the same thing for math. Our disparity isn't quite as big as it is at the state level. Okay. Here's our percent proficient on the MCAs, and some of these are prepared by me and some by Esther. So I'm this one looks like a new one that she did for me.
She did. She talked about this one today.
Okay.
And what this one shows is that at TCGIS, the tendency for non-white and multiracial students to meet or partially meet is higher than at the state level. Usually across the board in reading, math, and science.
And it's not just better, it's significantly better.
So the slides on top that say Minnesota Department of Education, is that like statewide?
Those are state averages.
They're what?
Those are for the state,
State
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
This is our free and reduced lunch count. Again, a slight improvement this year in math, or from 22 to 23. Probably the biggest difference from 22 to 23 is that none of the free and reduced lunch students exceeded proficiency. I don't have the state comparison here. Okay. And then a similar story in reading, except that in reading, you can see our exceeds did increase and our overall achievement for students at reduced lunch actually improved. 22. So the question is, are we catching up to past performance? It's usually a common question. And that's the next set of slides. The purple is 2023. And then you can see the other years in blue, yellow, and green. And of course, in 2020, we was not a test. So I guess it's getting close. 2023. And in some cases, it's starting to be better. Grade 3, grade 4 are better today than they were in 2019, 2021. This is math, same sort of concept, where purple is 2023, and then 2019 in blue, 2021 in yellow, and 2022 in green. In 2023, math is doing pretty well. The students who tested in math in 2023 are doing pretty well compared to some past years for most grades. The question sometimes comes up, why not before 2019? And there's a different test than there was before that. The tests have changed. How are the graduating cohort proficiency rates? So this looks at the cohort that's moving through the system. And this is the percent change on the MCA in math from 22 to 23. So you can see all classes, all cohorts improved with the exception of the class of 2024 from 22 to 23. So this is demonstrating the gains are being made. This is for reading. And then we did one for math. In this case, all cohorts are improving. And the class of 2023 improved by 20% from 22 to 23. That's pretty great statistic. Okay. Any questions about the data?
Are there any classes where a significant number of families opt out?
Opt out of the MCAs?
Not significant.
I'd say there are classes that have higher numbers of kids on IEPs.
But they take their own version or they take this. Okay. This is our first attendance report for the year, and we have an attendance of 96% of average daily attendance, which is really good. And this is through this is through September 30th. So next month you'll get the October 31st. And the winner is the 5th grade class. Yep, 5th grade at 97.9% attendance. Yeah, we should. In second place is 2nd grade, or no, sorry, sixth, isn't it 8th? It's 8th grade. Yeah, it's 8th grade. At 97.32.
They're not in order.
No, they're in order of how. Oh, yeah, it's middle school and then. Yeah. elementary. Okay. Us. So that's the update.
Thank you for that thorough presentation.
And I know there's a lot there to digest, so if you have more questions after tonight, feel free to email or get on the phone and we can go over some of the data. But really what I wanted you to take away is the improvements that we're seeing.
Mhm. Could you elaborate on how the test has changed from before 2019 to after? Because
So
the board has spent a lot of time discussing our really high MCA scores that we used to have. So that's the first time I've heard of a test change.
oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe I missed it. but-
I'll give you the flip note quick, just off the cuff, and then maybe I can bring some more specific slide to it next time, but
yeah,
the standards change and then they change the test, and the standards can change quite significantly. And so you cannot compare apples to apples, and so there will be that you will go on to the MDE school report card, and that's why you won't see data back a certain amount, because that test is no longer valid to be compared against results from 2019. So that was a year they made significant changes in the exam. And it's not so much that one was harder or easier, but they can't, but it's possible actually that one was harder or easier or not as hard. And so because they can't reliably compare the results, it's probably not reliable for us to be comparing 2019 MCA exam scores to 2010 exam scores.
It's gonna happen soon with science and with the new standards of implementation being finalized in 25, and so MDE has warned us ahead of time to be ready to see that drop, because there's going to be an inevitable during that flip when some standards are still being taught for the old group. One cohort is gonna miss something inevitably, no matter how you do it, and so they're gonna miss something that is gonna end up on the test. And so let's just prepare ourselves for what that will look like and know that that will be a
Yeah, and even beyond that, I think this is a totally, like, that's a change in standards that'll warrant changes on the test, and we are gonna see changes in proficiency. And MD will let us know if it's valid for us to compare that year of MCA science scores to the years previous under different standards.
Mhm.
So it doesn't make for, it's not always the best test to use for instructional purposes unless you're really digging into the substrands, which isn't very interesting to board per se. But for teaching purposes, you can dig deeper and kind of see what of the 9 questions that were focused on number sense, 100% of our kids got most of them wrong. That's useful for using in instruction. But for testing how well the school, and you can use it in broad sense for the school, but you can't continue to use different tests that are testing different things. It's like comparing apples and oranges. So 2010, 2011 is a different set of standards and a different test. But for the state, they're using it to test a real big system and just, it's like a dashboard. That's it. It's not the best tool to use to see if kids are learning. It is good to see if kids are being taught the standards. That's really the best it's for.
Mhm.
So it helps to an extent, but it's not, we need to use it in conjunction with our other instructional assessments to make sure that kids are making progress. I think, there's some alignment to, like, students, not as much anymore, but back in the day, like 5 years ago, could use some of these tests and crosswalk them to like the ACT and the SAT, which are gatekeeping tools for college, of course. But those aren't even being used as much in college anymore. And actually the MC was not a good crosswalk to the ACT, ever was. So it didn't give schools a real solid sense of whether kids were ready to enter or to pass an ACT test and get into college. So I think it's helpful to see if the school's making progress, but I'm glad we use a lot of other assessments here. And I don't think it's fair to compare these assessment results to those from previous renditions of the tests that aren't the same.
You.
Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, let's move on to our board liaison verbal reports. Director Smaka, parent liaison, do you have any updates?
The parent council will host a social and orientation night on November 6th. So they're encouraging all community members and board members to attend. And the goal of it is really to kind of educate parents about the school. So things like how it's structured, what's the difference between the board, the PTO, etc. As well as ways to get involved. There will be a booth set up at the end of the night. So we will host a school board booth. And then from all of the different affinity groups. So hopefully it'll be a good night and encourage everyone to attend.
It's gonna be a food truck, so
It'll be a food truck.
it'll be fun. They said it in the room brief, but I can't remember.
Yeah, I can't remember either.
Check
I
the
was
room
reading the
brief.
board packet. I couldn't read the room.
Yeah. Priorities. All right, thank you, Director Smaka. Staff liaison, Director Hyde.
I don't have an update. Staff council is still getting organized. I have heard progress in that area, so hopefully they will get organized and have a meeting here in the next few months, and I'll be able to give you a report at that time. If that doesn't happen in the next month or so, I will look for alternative ways to get to the school and be around staff again, like at the beginning of the year.
Okay.
And I've offered to convene them in a different way as well. If it doesn't work for staff council to come together. Like provide a feedback session, like I'll sit there and they can give me feedback. They don't like things.
If there's any teachers watching the meeting, you could consider
Yeah.
joining the staff council.
I
It
did
is
an
important.
email requesting that too,
Yeah.
so.
It includes more than teachers,
Yes.
EAs, support staff. Awesome. All right, I'd like to present the milestones for school year 22-23. These were originally in our strategic plan and we tweaked them a little bit at our retreat. Just to align them for where we were at, given the pandemic years that we've been experiencing. So let's see, I can share my screen. Right. So there's quite a few milestones still related to the innovative teaching and learning, of course. And I'm happy to take input from the administrators that are here. on if these are reasonable, given the year is already done. And we'll get the progress report at the next month's board meeting. If any of the currently listed milestones were not completed last year, just write not completed, and we'd like to suggest we move it to the following year, or you can suggest that it's not needed anymore. So just make a recommendation on what to do there. And you can see our goal for school culture and engagement regarding teacher retention is to retain approximately 85% of teachers every year. And that is based on our authorizer agreement on what we decided would be a reasonable number. And diversity and belonging. I think that we have a lot of milestones here, and some of these were added. A lot of them were added actually based on what was accomplished beyond the plan. So like establishing the diversity, belonging, equity, and inclusion student club was a new initiative led by Principal Flynn Fennig last year. And then financial sustainability. I'm recognizing that we likely didn't evaluate 2 new revenue ideas with business plans, but we are leaving it there to track it. If it's not done, we can move it forward. This is definitely a key piece of our strategic plan, is to figure out how to close the gap between our revenue streams and what will be increasing salaries and benefits year over year that will likely exceed the percentages that we get from the state.
Fourth graders have
I
So
heard
they were
a
in
little
my
bit about
office the
that.
day they want to start a
I make a lot of money.
My daughter will come back from high school for that.
All right, is there any feedback from administrators on the milestones or from board members?
I appreciate the clean copy. When we have been trying to dive into this, there's a lot of them, and so this is what I need.
Yeah.
To just kind of crank it out.
Yep.
And I think I probably gonna have to bear a lot of the innovative teaching part of this and just go through and either say we're pushing it out and it's currently a task force goal too. It'll be ready by next month. I don't have any questions right now.
All right. Great. So I'll make a motion to approve the milestones as shown for school year 22-23. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Director Hyde. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those,
Should it say 23, 24?
no, these are the milestones for last
Oh,
year. Yep. So this is what they'll report on progress
I
at the
think I
next.
asked the question last time.
It's confusing.
And they'll report on it at the next board meeting.
Yep. All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Motion carries. Thank you. I'll share the clean copy with you, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
All right. And that brings us to Director Albers for the academic officer verbal report.
Yeah, to start off, I'm actually gonna hand it over to Director Smaka, who filled in for me on Monday at the Curriculum Advisory Committee meeting. So
I'll just go over some highlights because a lot of it was covered from Director Clinton's report. But at the meeting, we went through some of the goals and looked at the school's recommendation for retiring some goals and putting in some new goals for a goal area of all children ready for school. And then the goal area of all students in 3rd grade achieving grade level literacy. And then all racial and economic achievement gaps between students are closed. And then there was an additional goal proposed for adding percent passing for the DSD-1 score. So there was a Google form filled out from all of the committee members supporting these different proposals. And there was a lot of discussion specifically around preparing kindergartners for the immersion experience of how we can better prepare them. There was talk of a kind of a summer camp to start with, really working closely with Kinderstube, but getting those families prepared and kind of ready to go. And then there was a lot of talk about the science, new science standards coming in and preparing those teachers to teach the new standards as well as learn and have curriculum time to actually develop the curriculum. And as Director Klinzing said, sending a teacher to the science conference in Rochester, which is a great thing for them to do. And then the new curriculum will be implemented next school year, I believe, 24-25. That's about it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One other note is that the public feedback session for the Curriculum Advisory Committee and the World's Best Workforce, it will be on November 8th at 7 p.m. Everyone is welcome to join that one and give public feedback. So if you're around, please, we love having as many people there. Moving to the Special Education Advisory Committee. Nothing new to report. They have not met this month since last month. That meeting is scheduled, the next meeting is scheduled for November 27th at 5 p.m. It's a Monday, it's right after Thanksgiving break. So if you are interested in showing up, we would love for that meeting to hopefully get off the ground. So for that committee too. And lastly, wellness. We've met twice in the past few weeks, and at this point, we've finished what's known as the WellSat. My laptop died, so I don't remember off the top of my head what it stands for, but it's basically a nice rubric saying, does our policy, our wellness policy, fit the things that are at the federal, state, and otherwise appropriate measured levels. That was completed last night, actually. And at this point, we are ready to make, the committee is ready to make the necessary changes to the wellness policy and then bring it forth to governance once it's ready. So we'll take that off of the governance plate for the most part, meet maybe once or twice more, get our ducks in a row, and then say, hey, we have these recommended changes and hope that the governance committee can take it from there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing that work.
It's been interesting. It's a very in-depth policy rubric that is it's a lot of deciding if we have it or not.
Mm-hmm.
And what does that mean, and is it policy procedure? Clearly it needs to be addressed somewhere. So we've talked a lot about vending machines. Books too. Yeah. We'll see how that fits.
I didn't have the heart to tell them about half the things I want to sell. They're not gonna need it. I might have them come before the wellness. So a bunch of fourth graders specifically today from your classroom, right? Pitched to me this idea for Starbucks at Twin Cities version. About half the things they want to sell at it, that won't actually fit with our new wellness policy. So we might have to have them pitch it to the wellness policy so they can get that experience.
It's great advocacy on their part.
Mm-hmm.
But the goal is actually for them to pitch it to the board. So cool. That's where they're at. We're taking it.
Nice.
But we're gonna help them revise their proposal multiple times before it gets to the board.
All right, I look forward to that.
FA, or are we talking franchise?
Yeah, you know, I think they're still debating. There was some talk today about licensing the Starbucks.
Yeah.
that might not be affordable.
Caribou might be cheaper.
So smart
Maybe,
bunch.
maybe we could do
I'm telling you.
mudslinger.
Yeah, one of them brought the caribou up and the other someone else, so that might be expensive. So. Awesome.
All right, thank you. Brings us to our board committee reports. I think we can go ahead to governance and leadership development as we have policies up for approval. I'll hand it over to Director Hartman.
Yeah, so the notes on kind of what was discussed at the last meeting are included in the board packet, the policies that are up for approval. I'll make a motion that discuss them, or do you want me to describe the changes and then make a motion?
Either way.
What happened? Okay. Let me quickly just summarize. There are not a lot of and probably no significant material changes to the 4 policies that are up tonight. 210.1, and no one seems to know why that's one, is our conflict of interest policy. There are a lot of deletions at the end, mostly due to it being duplicative. So no substantive changes to that policy. The group health insurance coverage purchasing policy is 426. That one, the only changes were to there's a couple conforming changes because of the change in the statute that now governs this. The only arguably substantive changes in 2.11, where we synced it up to match what the school actually does. Or what the board actually does, sorry, which is to consider the recommendation made by the school's authorized representative who considers the bids, and then we act on that at the board meeting. The next policy is 504, which is the student dress and appearance policy. There are no material changes to this. This was evaluated in 2020, and we specifically discussed whether gender inclusion had been considered, and it was, and changes were made at that time. So there are no changes to that policy now, other than some just cleanup. And then 610 is the field trips policy. On this one, we had discussion about the nature of the field trips. We did include a new definition of a day field trip and a new definition of an overnight milestone overnight experience. And 2 changes went into this policy. One was to sort of call out that all day field trips are part of school programming. Kids can go without consideration of financial ability to pay. And then in the social media section, and then separate section for the milestone overnight experiences. So those 2 are called out separately in section 9. And then under the social media section, we clarified to make it clear that under the policy, the school's social media policy, is that what we call it? Not a policy. The media release directory needs to be consulted. So just clarifying that parent chaperones and really any photos and stuff taken on a field trip need to go through the school to be posted on any social media platform. And that would be dealt with in training as part of the field trip, orientation, and there's a checklist that's used for that. So I will make a motion to approve policy 210.1, 426, 504, and 610.
Thank you, Director Hartman. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Director Albers. Discussion on these policies?
Just going back to the social media piece, that's something that, I think has not been as explicit as maybe intended. And that a lot of times you'll see parents that potentially are posting on their own social media of not only their child, but potentially other children. And that piece is, we need to make sure that they're on those field trips, those things are being done officially through the school, because the school has knowledge of who is allowed to be photographed based on parent permission. So because it's a school sanctioned event, it needs to go through the school.
Mhm. Any further discussion? Keeping track of time, we were. All right. There's no further discussion. All those in favor of approving the policies 210, 426, 504, and 610, please say aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Thank you for your work on the governance committee.
I actually have an action item for finance that I
Oh,
forgot to put in there. We need to approve our charter, which we reviewed at the meeting.
Same with communications.
same with yours too. Great. All right. Go ahead and hear about your charter.
Just basic updates for the year, updating the membership criteria. Only one update was made there, and that it was removing an obligation for the board chair to be on the finance committee. And then it was just updating the current members and administration and staff membership, updating the milestones in the strategic goals that pertain to the finance committee for this school year. Everything else was oh, and we also added the assisting the campus planning committee in developing a long-term campus plan. Those are all the changes.
All right, thank you. Any questions on the finance charter? All right, Director Smaka, could you go through your committee charter? Communication and outreach.
So we modified a few of the objectives to really show that we want to act as a support for the school's communication team, especially for our marketing and outreach, which is going to be a focus this year, as well as our efforts for student retention. We modified our subcommittees a little bit to include advocacy for one, recruitment, marketing, and outreach for another, community relations, alumni relations, and school mascot. And one of our discussion points is the fact that community relations is more of our TCGIS family, internal, and recruitment and marketing and outreach is going to be kind of our external. And then we also modified some of goals or measures of success, I should say, about retention numbers.
All right. Thank you. Any questions on the communication and outreach charter? All right. Which one of you wants to make a motion?
We make a joint motion. I'll make a motion. Oh, like, we can do them
Oh,
together.
yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve the finance committee charter for this year and the communications committee charter for this year. Do I have a second?
I would second it.
That was perfect. I thought you wanted two names on the motion.
Oh, no.
All right, all those in favor of approving these two charters, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Thank you both for your work on your committees. Okay. I think that brings us to the hiring committee.
I think it does.
All right, we have an important motion to make regarding our recommendation for executive director. All right. So I'm going to read a recommendation. The hiring committee recommends that the TCGIS Board of Directors offer current interim executive director Karen Klinzing a contract through the 2025-2026 school year with the option to renew. The hiring committee membership includes 2 teacher board members and 3 parent board members, and brings a combined total of 18.5 years of experience as directors on the TCGIS board. The members include the Diversity and Belonging Committee Chair, the previous Governance Committee Chair and current Academic Officer, the Treasurer and Finance Committee Chair, the Fundraising and Development Chair and current Board Vice Chair, and the Board Chair. 4 of these 5 members were on the hiring committee in the spring of 2021. This recommendation is based on the positive impact Karen Klinzing's leadership has had on the school's operational effectiveness, culture, and strategic initiatives since joining the school as interim executive director in June. During this time, Director Klinzing has guided the implementation of improved fiscal processes and procedures while working with operations team to refine job responsibilities to create better efficiency, balance, and clarity. She, along with her other administrators, have also implemented key strategic objectives of our school's strategic plan. Additionally, Director Klinzing has evaluated the feedback gathered last spring through staff and parent surveys and is collaborating with the administrative team to implement actions toward continuous improvement. The impact of her work to date was affirmed through a recent staff pulse survey administered by the TCGIS Board of Directors. The results of that survey showed improvement in the following categories: staff confidence in the school's administration, feeling supported by administrative leaders, and effective communication from administration. Considering these factors and the significant benefit of leadership continuity for the school, we are confident that extending Director Klinzing's tenure at TCGIS will be a benefit to our entire community. Director Klinzing describes TCGIS as a gem of a school and is equally excited by the opportunity to serve TCGIS in this capacity. TCGIS is fortunate to have found such a strong leader in Director Klinzing, who remarkably has experience living in Germany as an exchange student in high school and college. Her experience living in Aachen and Jülich, Germany is an unexpected connection that brings valuable perspective to our international community. Executive Director Klinzing closely matches the description of the ideal candidate that was determined in the 2021 year after comprehensive stakeholder focus group input. I shared those out earlier to the board. The qualifications were updated in the 2023 search with a prioritization of school leadership experience and fiscal experience, along with a deprioritization of German language fluency. The 2023 qualifications were also shared earlier. And I'll share my screen when I get down to that, so that those on Zoom can see. Karen Klinzing brings a wealth of experience in K-12 charter school leadership, having been engaged in Minnesota charter schools from various perspectives over the last 20 years. Karen served as a school leader in 2 distinctly different charter schools, as upper school director in a K-12 suburban charter school of 1,200 students, and as executive director in a K-6 inner city school serving 180 students. She has a strong grasp of what charter schools need in order to operate strategically, effectively, and efficiently. Director Klinzing brings a strong understanding of charter school state law through her previous experience as a state legislator and as Assistant Deputy Commissioner at the Minnesota Department of Education. Throughout her career, Karen has participated in the development and legislation of charter school law and policy. Prior to school administration and state policy making, Karen was a high school teacher and also a state standards coordinator in a large traditional public school district for 15 years. During that time, she also served as a member of the district teacher negotiation team. In 1999, she took advantage of the Minnesota law that allowed her to teach in a charter school and serve on its founding board. Director Klinzing holds 3 Bachelor of Science degrees from UW-Madison in secondary social studies education, political science, and sociology. She has a Master's of Arts degree in education from Hamline University. She has obtained education administration licenses in the state of Minnesota and has taken 45 plus doctoral level degree credits at the University of Minnesota in educational leadership and organizational development. This is respectfully submitted by the hiring committee, including Emily Albers, myself, Kirsten Reich, Kevin Hyde, Richard Hyde, and Kevin Aberhard. Thank you. All right, let me share my screen to show the characteristics of the ideal candidate from 2021. And then the qualifications in our 2023 search. Okay, so based on that, does anybody have questions? Director Klinzing, could you briefly describe your commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion work at TCGIS?
In my past experience with it or my commitment to it here?
Commitment to it here.
Oh, yeah. So, well, I believe that diversity is inherently, an organization is better when it has a lot of diversity in it. And that's diversity in terms of so many things, thought, ethnicity, culture, religious affiliation, gender affiliation. So I believe in a place that really people feel comfortable to be who they are and bring their special gifts and their culture to the fore. And that means too a diversity of family units and what those family units look like and how they're defined. And so I think we can hear the mission and the vision of the school makes it it's an automatic part of how we operate, because everything we do can come back to the mission and the vision, which is very much committed to diversity. And one of the things though that we can improve here is to bring in a broader diversity. I don't think we're as diverse as some schools when it comes to some of the ethnicity or even social economic standards, or socioeconomic status, especially as it relates to the community within which our school resides. The K-8 school that I was at for 3 years was 92% free reduced lunch. And it was about 8% white students who were white and the rest were non-white, and about 50% of the students spoke English as a second language, and that wasn't all the same language. And then the first school that I worked in Bloomington had 75 different languages spoken. So it would be my goal for us to work on recruitment that brings in a very diverse group of Twin Cities metro area families that can all appreciate the German culture and language that are part of the immersion program here. So a lot of experience in all aspects of diversity in every director job I've had. The previous position I was in was gender inclusive and fluid before a lot of schools had ever even considered it. So it's I believe in the inclusion, I believe in diversity, I believe in the mission of the school. And I think it lends itself to making sure different viewpoints are heard and people feel supported and included.
Thank you. Director Alders, would you like to make the motion?
Yeah, I would like to make a motion to recommend that Director Cleansing be our next executive director through the 2025-2026 school year.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second. But I don't think it's a recommendation, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry.
That's the motion.
Words.
And the contract, stop my share here. The contract was included in the board packet. There was one edit that Lori suggested today, Director Hartman. So let me pull that up. Okay. So the proposed language it's in paragraph 9C. She's recommending a rewrite that would say during the term of this agreement, the executive director shall not enter into any other employment contract and or any independent contract or arrangement of any kind under which the executive director is to provide professional services exceeding in the aggregate 20 hours of work per week. And if the executive director undertakes any outside services, they shall ensure that such additional work does not interfere with or impair their ability to perform their duties as required by this agreement or create any conflict of interest. The board will be notified of all additional work obligations. So it's not changing the intent of the paragraph, it's changing the wording.
It doesn't change how we've been operating, so
Right.
that sounds fine to me.
Good. And then there was a miss. Let's see. The dates are not updated in paragraph 11. Notice of intent to continue as executive director should say the intent of this position is to serve TCGIS as an executive director through the end of the 2025-26 school year. Right now it says 24-25. So that's a change. Good catch, Director Hartman. We're lucky you're a contract lawyer.
Not on lawyer.
But not our lawyer. Just very attentive to detail.
Good reader.
Okay. Yes.
So the engagement or the employment will start November 1st, right? And do we have any more financial obligations towards the company? What's the name of our current
Charter Source.
charter? Yes.
Right.
That relationship ends at the same date then?
Yes. We gave them notice to end our contract and so we're not paying anything additional. We're
And we don't have
continuing,
to, we don't have to pay them for the engagement.
no finder's fee or
Okay.
anything. Mhm. We are continuing to work with Charter Source though, with their financial advisor.
Yep, yep.
So. Any other questions?
Have a follow-up, we did the whole, we were gonna make sure there was nothing we needed to do vis-a-vis the authorizer.
Oh, I sent an email to the authorizer, with this update that we intend to do this, and she wrote back saying fantastic. I can pull up that email to see what she actually wrote. Okay, Julie, thanks for this information. I'm pleased to hear that Karen is being offered the position, as I know she will continue to make a positive impact. This seems like a good outcome to a difficult situation. I'm hoping the rest is about scheduling her fall visit, so.
So part of when I came on, it was moving some of the administration around. So that Elizabeth actually became the K principal. And then, of course, we brought Kim Reed on as the director of operations. Kind of moved her up, and I just want to say that I appreciate the support but it also is awesome. It gives you a very strong team, and you've allowed us to reorganize in a way that makes a lot of sense for the school, and there's very strong leadership coming from both Kim and Elizabeth in those realms. So happy to be part of it because it's a team.
Just one clarification is that Principal Zenfinick was K-8 principal starting last January.
Oh, that's right. Sorry.
I know it's probably all a blur, but
I think what you mean is I went back to.
Yeah, actually, that is kind of it, yeah, because you can't, that's what I'm trying to get at is the executive director job and the principal job are both super necessary, but very different. A lot of interaction with teachers and students when you're a principal and you meet a person doing that day to day, and then a lot of interaction with boards and committees and external players and lots of correspondence when you're in the ED. Yeah, it's just, I appreciate that the board recognizes the need for roles, but yeah, you're right. I meant it, actually, you're not doing both. You're new, I don't know what I mean. So.
Right. All right, any further discussion? All right, all those in favor of hiring Karen Cleansing through 25-26 school year, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Welcome aboard as a TCGIS employee. Official November 1st. Regarding new business, last time we discussed possibly moving the November 30th meeting. Richard might be traveling, but more importantly, it's Lori's birthday. So one proposal could be, because I think you should travel and just not worry about the meeting, moving it to the day before, the Wednesday, the 29th. If that would work for people. It's a meeting, right?
Yeah, I might not, we'll see.
All right, I'll make a motion to move our November board meeting from November 30th to November 29th.
And the motion, can we word it away from Lori's birthday?
Yes, recognizing that Director Hartman should not spend a second year in a row at a board meeting on her birthday. Is there a second?
A second.
Awesome, thank you. All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Make your birthday reservation, Lori. All right, with no other new business. Our next meeting will be November 29th, 2023, and this meeting is adjourned at 9:04 p.m.